When is it possible for an injured worker to sue for a lot of money? And what are some examples of some common situations? Under New York State regulations and laws, you cannot sue your employer or your co-workers if they cause you to get injured on the job. If you're hurt at work and your boss is responsible, or your boss is negligent, a co-worker is responsible or negligent, you cannot sue them. The only place that you can look to is workers' compensation. But if somebody else is responsible for your injury, your accident, your disability through their negligence, sometimes you do have the opportunity to file a lawsuit against that negligent party. We call these third-party cases. Why are they called third-party cases? Well, you, the injured worker, are the first party. Your employer is the second party. Can't sue them, so you have to sue a third party. Some common examples: car accident and construction site accidents. It's no coincidence that when you're home injured and you're not working and you're watching daytime television, you constantly see commercials from attorneys about ladder and scaffold accidents. Those are third-party lawsuits. The fall from a height on a construction site or any commercial site, when you fall from an elevated position and you fall down and get hurt, or something from an elevated position falls and hurts you, you can file a lawsuit in certain circumstances. Trip and fall, slip and fall accidents, any type of premises cases, we call those. If you're making a delivery to a restaurant and you're going to the basement and the stairs are broken or they're poorly lit or there's no handrail or the stairs are uneven sizes and they cause you to fall down the stairs. Premises case, you got hurt on somebody else's premises and they are negligence caused you to get hurt. You have the potential of filing a lawsuit against the people that cause you to get hurt. You still file your workers' compensation claim, but you do have the possibility to file a premises third-party action as well. We see it sometimes with product liability cases. Maybe you're at work as a construction worker and you're using a saw, and your boss's saw or your saw, it was poorly manufactured or poorly designed, and that saw malfunctions that causes you to get hurt. There is the possibility of filing a third-party action under a product liability theory, which is the product was somehow defective or improperly designed. Sometimes we see maintenance issues. If your boss has a company that comes in and maintains certain equipment and they fail to do it properly, and their negligence in failing to maintain equipment properly causes you to get hurt, there again is the possibility of filing a lawsuit. Does a third-party lawsuit pay more than workers' compensation? And if so, why and how much more? Well, how much more? It could be a lot more. Why is that? Workers' compensation, by the letter of the law, pays for medical, it pays for your lost time, and in some circumstances, permanent disability. And your lost time, the money you get while you're out of work and you're disabled, by definition, will never be your full salary. Workers' compensation pays 2/3 of your average weekly wage up to a statutory maximum. So once you earn over a certain amount of money, you cap out and you get the maximum amount. By definition, you'll never make your full salary when you're out on comp. It's as simple as that. A third-party lawsuit, on the other hand, they pursue your lost wages. They pursue everything that workers' compensation pursues as part of their lawsuit plus more. And what are those additional things? My own clients will say, well, I've been out of work for a few years. What about my pain and suffering? Unfortunately, under workers' compensation law, there is no award for pain and suffering. You're not going to get more money just because you're in pain. You will get more money if that leads to a disability and it causes you to lose time, and if it causes you to have permanent injury, possibly, but it is compensable in a third-party negligence lawsuit, and that could equal a lot of money. Similarly, punitive damages do not exist in the world of workers' compensation. Punitive means punishment. So punitive damages are awards that are given to the plaintiff, the injured party, in a lawsuit as a punishment to the defendant for doing wrong, for causing your injury, for being negligent. They are punishing that party, and that's where punitive damages come from. Punitive damages don't exist in the world of workers' compensation, unfortunately. They can be very, very significant depending on how careless, how wrong the person was that caused you to get hurt. So you do have the opportunity to pursue those types of damages. People also come to us in our world, in the workers' comp world, saying, I haven't paid my rent in 6 months since I got hurt, and I owe credit card bills, and they want money for that. Unfortunately, those are just not considerations that a workers' compensation judge will take because they're not provided for under the law. So workers' comp is medical benefits. They pay for you to see the doctor and get better, lost time, and possibly permanent injury. But in a lawsuit, there's much, much more there. Can you claim workers' compensation and file a third-party lawsuit at the same time? Yes, you can, and you should. For strategic purposes, if you have the opportunity to file a third-party lawsuit and a workers' compensation claim running concurrently, you want to make sure that they're both filed timely. You don't want to miss the limitations. You don't want to file your workers' compensation claim, get your treatment, and then decide 5, 6, 7 years down the road, maybe I should file for my third-party lawsuit, because you might miss the statute of limitations. You have to file timely. You also want to make sure the lawyers that are handling both cases are working together to make sure that everything is working the way it should be working. Make sure you're getting the treatment that you need. Make sure you're getting the benefits that you need that can sustain you while you're out of work and you're disabled. So you absolutely want to file them, and you absolutely want to file them at the same time and keep them running together. Do you have to pay back benefits? Now, the general answer answer to that question is yes. When you have a workers' compensation case and you have a third-party lawsuit and the two cases are running together, when it's time to settle your third-party lawsuit, when that case is coming to a close, your attorney has to get permission from the workers' compensation insurance company to settle the case. And part of that consent process, that we call it, is the insurance company taking back the money they spent on your workers' compensation case from your third-party case. The law doesn't allow for double dipping. You can't get your medical benefits paid for twice. You can't get your lost time paid for twice. So since workers' compensation already paid for it and you're getting a recovery in the other case, they're allowed to take their money back because they essentially forwarded you that money. They prepaid you that money and they're allowed to get it back. But they don't take it all back. And the reason for that is because you went and hired a lawyer that got you a favorable outcome and it cost you money. If you settled your case for $1 million, at the end of the day, after fees and expenses, you might only walk away with $600,000. And if that's the case, it cost you 40% of your settlement to get that money. So they have to reduce what they're taking back by that same percentage. It's called the cost of litigation. But yes, they do get their money back. They don't get it all back. And sometimes you can negotiate that they get back even less. Very, very important. Is it more difficult to file a third-party lawsuit than a workers' compensation claim? And what do you have to prove? Quick answer is yes, it is more difficult. And the reason is workers' compensation is a no-fault system. You do not have to prove much to get workers' compensation. You need to prove that you were working in a covered employment, and that you were injured while you were working. As long as those circumstances apply, generally speaking, you're covered and you have a valid case. Under a third-party negligence, personal injury type of case, you need to prove that someone else's negligence caused you to get hurt. Somebody was careless. Somebody acted improperly and caused you to get hurt. That somebody blew a red light and hit you. Somebody didn't give you a proper harness when you're working up on a scaffold and that caused you to fall. So it is more difficult that you have to prove wrongdoing, whereas in workers' compensation, you do not have to prove wrongdoing there. Are there any risks that injured workers should know about? When you have a workers' compensation case, a third-party lawsuit, or both, there's always the risk of them surveilling you. They follow you. They put investigators on you. Happens all the time. And they want to make sure that you're being truthful and honest with respect to your abilities. You're not faking your disabilities. Sometimes they check your medications, make sure that you're taking your medications. They check up on all that stuff. So you need to be very careful. How long does a third-party lawsuit typically take from start to finish? Well, as a comparison to a workers' compensation case, it takes generally much longer. Workers' compensation cases are usually quicker from start to finish. They start when your injury first happens, or right around that point in time, and they usually start wrapping up within a couple of years when your injuries reach the point of maximum medical improvement. Once there's a good idea as to what your level of permanent disability is, listen, some people get hurt, they recover for a few weeks, they go back to work at full duty. That's probably the majority of cases, and the cases are distant memory. That case is going to last as long as you're out of work, maybe a little bit longer. I always tell people your workers' comp case lasts as long as you need it to last. A third-party lawsuit lasts as long as it takes to litigate, negotiate, and finalize the case, and it could take years and years. So generally, a third-party lawsuit is much, much longer lasting than a workers' compensation benefit. The trade-off of workers' compensation is you get quicker benefits, generally speaking. Your employer pays for insurance to cover a worker in case there is an injury, and that worker will get quicker benefits, easier benefits with a lower burden of proof, but the amount of monetary rewards, as we discussed earlier, is much, much less. There's no punitive damages. There's no pain and suffering and things like that. So that's the general trade-off. Do you have any expert tips for injured workers planning to file a third-party lawsuit? My first tip is evidence, evidence, evidence. As important as evidence is in your workers' compensation case, it's even more important in your third-party lawsuit. And it's because of that burden of proof. We don't have to prove much in workers' compensation to be successful in getting your case established and getting you benefits. But in a third-party lawsuit, a negligence lawsuit, you have to prove that somebody else, a third party to that matter, caused you to get hurt. And it's based on evidence. You know, is there proof of when the building was inspected, or when the light bulb was changed, or when the forklift was last maintained? All those facts are very, very important. So, you know, when you're at a job site, pictures of the permits, pictures of the job site, pictures of the accident location, pictures of the items that caused the accident and the injury. In a motor vehicle accident, the police reports that describe the accident, super important because they show who is at fault. In a workers' compensation case, even if the delivery driver was bending down to pick up his cell phone that he dropped on the floor and caused an accident, technically he's entitled to benefits. He was working and he had an accident. Under a third-party lawsuit, that would be less possible because he caused the accident. So evidence is very, very important. Equally as important is use a reputable attorney. If you have a workers' compensation and a third-party case stemming from the same accident, use attorneys that you know through recommendations to be reputable, good attorneys and have worked together. And when it comes time to settling either or both of the cases, they can work together to maximize what they're going to put in your your pocket. It's really, really important, and it works to your benefit when you have good attorneys, reputable attorneys who work well together. That's the way it should always be. If you got hurt and you think there might be a third-party lawsuit here and you have questions about that, you can always give us a call, 212-406-8989. Please feel free to give us a call anytime. And thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you very much.